Hi, and thanks for joining us for another episode of This Week in Evansville. I'm your host, Johnny Kincaid, along with Janet Douglas. Thanks for making us a part of your day today. And we've got today just a bunch of topics to cover. There's a ton of stuff going on. It's kind of like we're getting to the end of the year, and everybody has just bunched stuff up here into a nice big bundle for us. Probably the start, actually, before we even get to that, I want to talk about the fact that we're going to be going through some new things as we get into the next year for 2024.
Yes. Exciting things.
The first is going to be the launch of Janet's podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited. The View God's Way. And we're going to have a different guest here with us in the studio. And then we'll also have remote guests that will hop on. And it will be about culture. But what is the view of the Lord on that? What is the view of the Word of God? So we're really excited to launch this. We'll share more about that in a separate podcast because we'll just share with you how that all came about 27 years ago, and now we're just now getting to jump into it. So we're excited.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And also, we're making some changes as far as distribution goes to make the podcast more readily available to more people. We're going to be posting on Spotify and distributing out an audio version of the podcast so that if you don't have the opportunity to sit down with YouTube and watch it, you'll be able to listen to the entire episode or episodes with wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and also on that, obviously everyone knows that YouTube can often be different to work with. I'm watching my words so that we have an opportunity to have this released. But we want to do more to talk about really what's going on in not only in our city, but in culture, but like in the entire state, the region. And we don't want to have any flags. And I know for me, Johnny, when I'm listening to someone, it's frustrating when it's locked out or you have this or have that. So we do want to make everything we do from here on out, especially for our followers, that it's easy and simple. Exactly. So I'm excited to kind of pull into Rumble and Spotify and all the other places we can go to. So it's going to be exciting. Exactly. And it'll broaden our base to where more people will be able to hopefully hear what's going on in the region, which is the whole purpose of this podcast.
Well, let's get right down to business now. Okay. First of all, we got the results of the election this year, new mayor going into office. We will have a city council that is 8 Democrats and 1 Republican. Now, at in the Evansville area here, that's not all that big a deal.
Not uncommon.
It's not uncommon, and it's really not a big deal because we tend to be very moderate here, so you don't get the extremes on both sides that you find in some places. So we will keep an eye on the city council, obviously.
And you have invited her several times to join us on the program, and so we're hoping that once she gets through the process and life is simpler for her, we're hoping that she'll take us up on that, because we would love to hear from her. We would love to hear what she feels led that she's going to be doing in our city and how she's going to lead the people of Evansville. So we're going to keep pressing that. So I'm excited. Hopefully she'll take us up on the...
And she has a 20-member transition team.
Yeah, big transition.
I don't recall seeing anything about the process like this in the past after an election. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Stephanie Terry deals with this transition and who she appoints into different positions.
Right.
All of the city department heads have to, of course, reapply for their job, and that's normal and customary when there's a change in leadership at the top. So they all have to reapply for their jobs if they want to hang on to them, and new people applying for those positions, of course, as well. One thing that Stephanie did that was kind of interesting is that they took and posted the job openings for all of those positions on her campaign website.
Right.
So they aren't posted as openings on the city website because technically they aren't open, right? So, but on our campaign site, and they're now looking at applicants for every department head position, including fire chief and police chief. And you know, the rumor was that Philip Smith was going to be. It was a shoe-in for police chief, and that a deal's already been made there. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But we don't know for sure that that's going to be the case. So we'll keep an eye on all of that, and it's going to be really interesting to see what develops as we get closer to the new year and the time for the official transition to take place.
Yeah. So maybe one of our listeners might want to apply for some of those applications or those openings that are coming up.
So you just look up Stephanie Terry's campaign website, and you'll find all of those job descriptions there. So if you're interested in a position in this administration, you know, I get the impression that Stephanie's not a person that I would expect to see huge numbers of political favors, you know, being done in this process. And I've looked at the people, and I know some of the people that are on our transition team, and I think that they're going to get a kind of a solid grip on all of this.
We
absolutely
need a good solid base in our city.
And speaking of elections, you know, this last election year,
we're still talking about the last election.
Yes. Well, you know, we're not that far away from it.
It's true.
So
it's an inside joke.
But you know, I looked through. I kind of pour through the numbers after the election is over with, because I know some people were talking about, you know, the fact that the Libertarian is the reason why the Republicans lost.
Right.
He's not. When you get in and really look at it, did he take some votes away from the Republican? I'm pretty sure he did.
Sure.
But had the Republican Party done a better job of getting out the vote, that's what would have made the difference. And the simple fact is the Democrats did a better job of getting the vote out in almost every precinct in the city. And that's why we say, you know, if it was only the mayor's race that was impacted in this last election, I'd be all with you saying, yeah, that Libertarian was the spoiler. Right. But it wasn't. It was every single city council seat and in every precinct in the city. So, you know, that just tells me that the Democrats did a stellar job of getting the vote out. Republicans didn't.
And let's not forget, that's all the way up to presidential elections. The Democrats seem to have their ducks in a row, if you will. And I don't know if I don't know what it's going to take for us to shift that as, you know, as a Republican Party, if you will. But we've got to make some changes in how we do things.
I think the changes are going to happen in leadership. They have to.
They have to.
And there are people moving right now. They're figuring out the system, because the two-party system is the way it's supposed to work. Is it puts the power at the local grassroots level.
Right.
And it hasn't been working that way for a while, and it's all been trickling from above. And so there are some folks at the grassroots level that are looking at how do we turn this around.
Right.
And you know, we're going to talk more about that right around the first of the year, once the time frame opens up for filing for candidacy.
Right.
We're going to talk in detail about how you become a precinct committee person, regardless of which party you're with, and how you become a delegate to the state convention.
Yeah.
So we want to share that information because it gives the power back to the people at the local level, and we'll talk in more detail about that in the weeks to come. Also, kind of stirring on the election scene is a lawsuit brought by a couple of people from Chandler, Indiana, that was accusing Warrick County of using uncertified and vulnerable voting machines, and that lawsuit has been dismissed. Yeah. Judge Richard Young threw the case out on jurisdictional grounds. And actually, it's been a couple of weeks since that's happened, but it just made it into the newspaper recently. The lawsuit named, of course, county officials as well as the county itself. But again, that's been thrown out of court. One of the movements that is coming about, and part of the reason for this lawsuit, is because electronic voting machines are seen by a lot of people as not being safe and secure.
Right.
That it might be too easy to manipulate the information, or if the voting machine is connected to the internet, there could be a security breach there, because we've all seen what happens with hackers getting into all kinds of so-called unbreakable systems. So the move is, and the solution that's being proposed, is to move toward paper ballots. Now, and I know that the people who brought this lawsuit are big proponents of paper ballots. Right. Also, just to let you know that it's in a much bigger level than just that lawsuit in Warrick County. Yeah. Our Secretary of State in Indiana, Diego Morales, is also a believer in paper ballots, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and I've got to get him on the show.
Yes, we do.
Because he talked about this subject in a little bit more detail to a group a couple of weeks ago when I saw him, and I was really I was fascinated with the idea, because we tend to think of paper ballots as being less efficient, more difficult to count,
Well, we've seen the chads.
The hanging chads, all of that stuff, right? And doing a recount becomes, an issue there. But when you look at the vote count, how quickly the vote count gets done under the current system, which the current system, the other thing that people are talking about is doing away with voting centers and going back to voting at your precinct. Because it seemed that when they were doing the precinct level counts, that it worked.
It worked.
Yes. So that's part of what's on the horizon. That's stuff that the people are going to be talking about and will probably be raised as an issue more than once in the next year coming about.
Especially in 2024, because of all the elections or all the precincts, everything that's coming forward, because there'll be a lot of openings. So we got to have a plan, or they have to have a plan, right?
Right.
Of which direction. And like you said, the paper ballots have their own issues, but you hear the story, and this is what I hear in the circles of governmental people that I'm talking with, that they say, well, we have to expand our horizons. We have to go with culture. We have to do these things. But, I'm old school, Johnny. So I'm like, why are we changing something that worked? But I also realize that, we are in the 20th century.
We got to keep up.
That's
it.
So, yeah.
Well, it's going to be a
interesting.
Yeah, interesting debate taking place. And you'll have to pardon me, because my phone is ringing, and I'll show you. It says scam likely. All right, so we're not going to just ignore that.
Scammers.
That's the problem with people like me being forgetful and not turning the ringer off. So we'll take care of that.
That's why this show is fun, though. We just are who we are, and you get what you see is what you get. So
I've had people as guests before say, "Well, could you edit thus and such out?" And I'm like, "No, because we don't edit. We just roll with it and keep on going." I thought this was kind of interesting. Just a weird side note. Guy's been arrested in Evansville recently. He's a convicted felon, and was apparently not thinking clearly at the time, and threatened the staff in the mayor's office. Vanderbilt County sheriffs took him into custody, and what happened was his car had been towed, and he went to the mayor's office to resolve that, which wrong place. They told him that's police department's issue, not ours, and so he didn't want to take that for an answer, and he was becoming more and more agitated. So they called to get a deputy to come up to the office. Deputy came up just in time to hear the guy saying, "Well, I'll show you what reincarnation is all about."
Right.
Yeah. And that was enough to constitute a threat, and then he fought with the deputies and so on down the line. So
So yay for the deputies that handled it, because I think from what I understand, they handled it very well. And I think you're right. He just was a little agitated, and he just wanted his car.
Yep. I know it never ceases to amaze me how people will do things like that. All right, some of the other things that are going on right now that I want to talk about here is that's not necessarily in Evansville, but is going to impact us in Evansville. One is a new project that's being funded. I mean, they've got a ton of funding for this, including from Eli Lilly, and it's called LEAP, and it is involving building a planned area, planned community that includes industrial, commercial, and residential. And they're kind of modeling this after what are called 15-minute cities. If you don't know what 15-minute cities are, it's the new buzzword on the international scene for urban planning and saving the planet. And the idea is to have everything within 15 minutes walking distance of your home. So you would work within 15 minutes walking distance of your home, thereby eliminating the need for your car.
And that's not the same as the smart cities that you're hearing the buzzword, because a lot of people are getting that confused, because when I've been speaking about this, they're like, yeah, we know all about the smart city. This isn't that. This is the community that they're trying to control climate in our lives in some way.
So here's where the thing, though, has become controversial. This probably would have flew under the radar and been very, very quiet if it wasn't for the fact that where they're putting this, which, and correct me if I'm wrong here, they're placing this development in Lebanon. It's 20 minutes from the Indianapolis airport. It's got this great location to it, and then they're going to pull the water for this project because that's what they didn't develop in coming up with this plan. Was what about water resources?
And they need water.
So they are talking about building a pipeline. And the pipeline is going to run from West Lafayette to Lebanon to provide water for this. And when we talk about the pipeline, it's going to run in the millions of gallons per day and could affect water rights throughout the state. Because the battle now that is brewing deals with whether they have the right, whether the state has the right to say, we're going to build this pipeline and take your water.
And doesn't the water come, did I understand that right? It comes from the Wabash?
I believe that's correct.
So it would affect southern Indiana. It'll affect the whole state. If
it affects the amount of flow there is from that river, but you could be looking at future projects basically doing the same thing. And water rights are always a big concern when it comes to development. This is a 9,000-acre tech hub that they're planning to build. So imagine you're trying to bring in high-tech industries and as well as more residents. And
with electric cars.
Yes. And all the water that you're going to need for that.
And it's a prototype. From what we heard when we first started hearing about this development, we heard that it's an actual prototype for the nation. And so, we're watching that closely because of that. And other states are now watching what's going on. And even some of the powers that be are actually getting information from other people throughout other states, because we need to know what's going on. And the good part about it is when we first learned about it, we made mention very shortly, but mention on this program. And then we reached out to all of the people on our network, and they went to the first meeting, and we were excited because there were over 1,000 at that meeting. So they've tabled it for now, but they're still going forward behind the scenes. So we can't just because they tabled it, we can't just ignore it. We've got to get in front of this.
This is going to be a big issue in the legislative session for 2024. So starting in January, your state legislators are going to be debating this, investigating it and making a determination as to how they want to vote on this particular issue. And the best advice that we have is to stay in contact with your state legislators.
Get involved.
We're going to try to keep you updated on some of these legislative issues as they come up. You know, last year, this blows my mind. Last year, the legislature considered 1,000 bills, 1,000 new laws that they thought about last year in the legislative session. So, I mean, how do they possibly study all of those, understand them, and know how to vote on those things?
And some of those laws, they're lumping together, just like what we see in the federal government. They're lumping them together, and so if we don't keep up, we don't even know. And that sometimes changes, Johnny. I've been there where you're reading this and they go back to the drawing board, and within an hour they've rewritten it and changed it. So you really have to stay up on it. And I want to encourage our viewers that if you have the time, get involved, because we need to be able to go and listen and voice our concerns to our legislators, as well as be there to know what's going on, because it is the people's house. So we have to fight. And I talk to a lot of people that say to me, and this used to be my comment before God shifted me to start getting more involved myself, but it was, there's no point in me going. I'm just one person. It's not going to matter. And we have that attitude throughout the nation and even in the region, that there's no point in me going. There's no point in me voting. There's no point. I'm just one person. And we can't have that mindset. We have to shift that as the people of Indiana. We have to shift that.
Absolutely.
So get involved.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
That we're going to get some kind of sense into the system. I mean,
common sense.
Common sense, yes. Oh my gosh, that's really lacking when it comes to government. And we're going to be talking to our state legislators as the session gets started up in Indianapolis as well. One of the things that our legislature did previously was passing what everybody refers to as a near total abortion ban. Yeah. That was over a year ago that took place. There have been multiple lawsuits filed against it, trying to question the constitutionality of it. They've had some of these cases that have been thrown out of court that haven't been able to gain any traction. Well, the American Civil Liberties Union is now going in with another lawsuit, and this time they're using Indiana's Religious Freedoms Law, RFRA. They're going to use that, religious freedom, as their pretense for filing the next lawsuit.
So just like we talked about before we came on air, it's interesting. I find it interesting that they use that in certain ways, but then in other ways, it's for you or against you, depending on how they need to use it. There again, we need to wake up and do our part. We have to take a stand. I'm gonna go kingdom for a moment. This is the decade of the pay. This is the decade of the voice, and our voice matters, and we really need to voice. We are the citizens of Indiana and the nation, and we can no longer remain silent. We have to get our voices heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crucial.
Otherwise, we turn all of the power over to people sitting in the legislature, or even worse yet, panels of judges who wind up making those decisions for us. And we don't want the judges to be doing that.
No.
And speaking of judges, a county judge in Marion County has ruled that there's a state law that limits who can become a candidate in either the Republican or the Democrat Party. This law was used to eliminate mayoral candidates in Evansville earlier in the election process, because they didn't want their candidate to be primaried. So that was used, and the law the way it is right now is that you have to be a member of the party in good standing, and that involves you have to have voted a Republican or a Democrat ticket, depending on your party, in the last 2 primaries that you voted in. Mm-hmm. So the judge has said that that is unconstitutional, and if it stands, then John Rust, who has been running for Senate, and he wants to, I'm guessing he wants to run for Mike Braun's seat.
That would be my guess.
And he has been booted out of that because the party mainstays want Jim Banks. So if he gets enough signatures to do so, based on this court ruling, that'll probably be appealed. He can actually appear on the ballot in the primary.
Right.
Oh, it is.
It really, it's overwhelming to just try to keep up with the changes that continue. They come, and it's a lot.
It is.
Which is why the average person says, I don't have time to get involved. But that's why we do what we do, and that's why we're doing it, and even working on a stronger base of what we do here in the studio so that we can help get the word to you of this is the nuts and bolts, if you will, of what's going on. So you don't have to filter through all of the news and all of that. So we're going to be doing that, especially as we go forward in 2024. And I think what we're already doing is we're expanding even further than Evansville because we have to get involved with the governmental decisions that are going on in Indianapolis because it affects the whole state.
Absolutely. And at a federal level as well. Things
Yes.
that happen at the federal level do impact us here on a local level. And, those things that we know are going to have, are going to kind of shake the earth of Evansville,
Right.
We definitely want to talk about on this show. So we'll be doing, kind of continue watching and listening for what's going on federally with legislation as well as locally. Most people are aware that I'm a believer that less government is better.
Yes.
And that we do more
I
things
agree.
closer to home rather than doing them at the federal level. We tend to say, well, the feds have all the resources. Well, that's because the feds take their share of your money
Right.
before they do anything else. So if we want to bring those resources back where they belong in our home community, then what we've got to do is we've got to get the feds to quit picking our pockets,
Right.
so that we can do more and more at the local level and have an impact on our communities.
Yeah, and even in that, I know several people. It's cliche now. It's funny because several people have said you need to run for this or that in Warrick County, and I laugh because I have no desire. That's not my calling. That's not what I'm called to do. But there are some that are called to that, and I think there again. I mean, on my soapbox. We have to understand we are the citizens. The house is ours, and we need to get involved. And maybe God is calling some of you to run for offices at the grassroots level all the way up to the federal. And don't think that can't happen because all things are possible with God.
Exactly.
But we need citizens of Indiana running. We don't need people moving in the state and running for office because they've been handpicked. I'm going to go there. Handpicked by somebody because they want to control and or pull in the resources and so forth from Indiana. That's got to stop.
It's all about what we do as individuals and making our voices heard.
Right.
We're gonna kind of keep driving that message
Yes,
home.
we are.
As we go through, and probably in every episode we should be saying something about
Yes.
make your voice heard. Simple as that. All right. Well, that is wow.
That went
flown
fast.
by. It really did. We want to just say a thank you. I have in the past couple of times that I've been out doing things in the public, I have heard some really nice comments. A student from University of Evansville. Even stopped me one evening and was sharing about listening to the show. And one of the things that people are saying they really like have been the candidate interviews because, we really strive to not to not tip our hand to our belief, but to let the candidate speak what the truth that they need to speak, and let you decide from there. And so people have been very appreciative of that. And what I want you to know is that in the upcoming gubernatorial race, we're going to be doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
The statewide races are truly important to our local community, as well as to the entire state. So we'll be giving you more on that as we go along. So thank you for taking the time to join us, and we hope that you'll join us again. Be sure. Oh yeah, you gotta click on the like thing,
like and
share and subscribe. Subscribe is really important because then you get a notification every time a new episode pops up. So please do that, and then join us on our next episode of This Week in Evansville.